Hey friends, welcome to the Business in Real Life podcast. We're here to help you start your business and make it easier. Speaking of which, today we have Alex Burge. He's a freaking boss. He runs a company that really just makes it way easier and more seamless to find manufacturing and bring in your product. We'll be talking about everything that he does today, as well as kind of how he got started and where he's at now. So let's roll into it. I gave a light intro, but tell me in really simply, what does Shift do and why people should use you? Like, what makes you guys better than everybody else?
Kind of our bread and butter is really being able to be a good partner. The analogy we use is like we have this V12 engine, for supply chain, and we want to plug that into your company, be able to help you to grow without having to worry about the operations side of things. So that takes a lot of forms. Anything from a new startup all the way to a large corporation who needs something made. So we come in, we have teams around the world. We have our headquarters here in Utah. We'll basically, rather than saying, hey, I can get you something in China, that's kind of a very commodity level version of what we do. Really, we say, hey, what's your company need right now? What are the needs that you have that are keeping you from becoming what you want to become operationally? And so for some people, they come to us and they say, hey, I have a good product, but I need it faster, or I need it cheaper, or I need it near shore, or I'm spending too much of my time staying up at night so that I can't, do what I do best. And so we kind of call it like an artisan solution. There's not a one size fits all. It's really come in, let us ask the right questions, figure out what you need, we'll build it. And we'll run it for you. And so if we do our job right, you can go market, sell, innovate, and do that kind of unbridled so that you can do what you do, and we can help you.
Rad.
Yeah.
So just full transparency, we've used them for 3 years?
Yeah.
Something like that. And for us, it's made a huge difference because we're a really small team. So it's like the whole staying up at night was a huge part for us, but also just finding a new manufacturer, cheaper manufacturer, more efficient processes, something we hadn't done a lot. And so for us, they've been huge with that, as well as like helping with design and a lot of other things as well. So it's been a good time. So I lightly know your history, but I don't know it super well.
Yeah, Shift started in 2017, October, I think, 2017. Basically, preceding that time, I'd worked at a company where I learned how to do this, and so I basically it was an awesome experience. It was also a startup, and so there was it was kind of a perfect boot camp to teach me the reality of doing this on my own. Walked in the first day, pick a cubicle, bring a computer. Didn't have anyone assigned to train me, didn't have any of that. And so at the time, it was a little bit of a refiner's fire, I guess. But that taught me the reality of, okay, what is this going to take to learn how to do this? I had a good ecosystem to teach me. I ended up doing that over time. I ended up being able to kind of learn how to take companies, essentially at the time it was just to China. The company I worked for didn't have resources beyond China. And so that's when I took my first trip to China. I helped a bunch of companies get their stuff set up over there. And I did that for a few years and enjoyed it. And unfortunately, that company didn't survive. And I also have my degree in supply chain management. So between the two kind of experiences, it was natural for me to I needed to either get a job or I needed to just start a company. And so with a small handful of us, we decided to jump into this and give it a go. So that's a short story about how we started. And we just kind of the cool thing. So my dad's actually the chairman on the board and my partner. And so at the time, he was the CEO of another company, but had a shared interest in creating this, what we felt we could do together. And so that's what we did. We dove in, and it was me and some part-time help, and so in a windowless room in the basement, and the first bit we didn't know how it would go, and it was kind of just every day it was like, how many days could I pay the bills? And when we had $20,000 in the bank, we were like going out for drinks, That's how we kind of felt. It was just
totally.
it was
I
it was
still
awesome.
feel that way,
So,
so
yeah. so that was kind of the story, and we were lucky enough to have some good things happen and have grown it since then.
Was Norm and stuff on at that time? Anybody on that's still on?
Yeah, everyone who started actually. So my sister was doing the design work for us. Super talented designer. My brother had just moved back into town, and he was helping us mostly with technician stuff. So he had different projects that he would help us, which was also critical to kind of the experience that we had to cater to at the beginning. And then we brought Norm on. Like, he was a student. He's from New Zealand. He was here for school, and he had been, I guess, probably like 4 weeks in is all. We brought him on, and he'd worked in factories, had experience, and then we added from there. But yeah, it was a lot of running back and forth from school and eating Dairy Queen as I sprinted up the stairs and
lucky, dude.
Trying to run back and forth. Yeah. So
those chili hot dogs, dude. Bomb.
Yeah. That was an interesting time, but it was fun.
Yeah, it's crazy at the beginning, like how different it is. Well, especially you. Like, how many employees do you guys have now?
We have 27 employees globally. We have 16 of those here in Provo.
Sick.
And then we've got 6 Chinese nationals that work in China, 2 actually India nationals that work in Vietnam at our office there in Ho Chi Minh. And then we have 1 individual down in Mexico City.
Cool.
So that's kind of and that's the, I guess, DNA of the team.
So rad. Before we were talking about like how you kind of grew up around manufacturing, because your dad had some manufacturing stuff here in Provo when you were growing up. Yeah. So obviously it had an influence. There's no doubt about that. Did you always kind of think you're gonna like grow up and get into manufacturing and stuff because you saw it, or? No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, it wasn't that it wasn't inspiring. It's just that I don't think I was that thoughtful, as a kid. Like I thought I was going to be in the NBA, Dude.
Like every kid had. Those were the only real dreams that I thought through. Huh. And, not making the freshman team really cut me down. So I had to rethink my life. But, yeah, I loved it. It was inspiring. I mean, my dad inspired me in general as a kid. But I guess maybe subliminally I always thought that I would end up at his factory just because that's what you do. Yeah. And I just before this podcast, I stopped by his old factory and kind of sat in the parking lot until a truck driver came and told me I had to move. But I was getting all nostalgic about it because I remember as a little kid going to that factory, seeing all the equipment. I mean, he had 400 employees, and yeah, it's inspiring and it's cool. But I thought I was gonna do, be a doctor, or be just typical stuff, right? Where it's like. Well, and that even sounds like cool, but
late teens or like early 20s when you were going to school, like where was that switch? Where like, oh, manufacturing actually or supply chain management sounds rad.
Honestly, I felt like it was something that I just fell into and I learned it, and so I kept doing it. So I let's see, started college, served a mission for my church, and that's when I came back. Yeah, I came back and I was working at a tech company, and then it was like, man, I always wanted to do something around my dad and learn from him. Yeah. And so we were chatting one day. I think we were going to a tennis match or something. I remember this car ride where it was like, well, what could we do together? And so I went and got an internship at a company that he had a stake in. And that's kind of that experience I alluded to earlier. I take a seat and they started throwing documents at me. And the first project I had was they handed me this stack of probably 200 pieces of paper. And it was all of these commercial invoices and shipping, packing lists. And they basically said, hey, we've made millions of light bulbs for Walmart. We don't know why our documents don't match, but this is a project that somebody's got to do, so figure it out. What? And so I was like, well, I don't even know what a commercial invoice is at this point, right? Like I've never really done anything manufacturing, and I think I spent a month on that, and it was totally a disaster, and I didn't even solve the problem.
You never did?
No. I made this really nice binder that basically just the conclusion was like, I have no idea. So that was it.
PowerPoint.
And so manufacturing, and then it was like, okay, well, I'm doing this. I really liked it. I love product. At heart, I'm really a product guy. I'm not a manufacturing guy. I'm more of an entrepreneur and a product guy, and I've surrounded myself with people who are manufacturing people, and that's kind of allowed me to learn and make this even happen.
Totally. Well, and because of that, the side note of that is now you're around all these people creating products, and like you will inevitably create products, and when you do, it's going to be so easy.
Yeah.
Like you'll know exactly what to expect. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's it. If I'd gone back, I would have. If there's an alternate me, it's going and trying to become like a product designer and really get into that, but there's still time.
Totally.
So
the current state, obviously from the time in the dark room in the basement.
Yeah, it was dark. It was bad.
Or windowless.
Yeah, windowless room. That's right.
They until now, your vision is obviously different.
Yeah.
How has it kind of changed and morphed into what it is?
So I mean, honestly, it really was like I didn't have a job, and so I was the last or one of the last people at that company. It went from 50 employees down to 0. And
Crazy.
I was there the day the doors locked for the last time, basically, right? There were some like security guards and stuff, but I was there till the very end. And part of that was a big part of that was a feeling of obligation to the people I was working with. And it was really kind of a hard time for me as much as it was for them. And it was all well-intentioned, you know, it just happens sometimes with businesses. But so it was kind of this mindset of I'd tried a couple of businesses, a couple of products before. They weren't successful by way of like actually paying the bills, but they were successful in that I learned things and the reality of how to do products. So I did like a little wallet company. I did a towel company with some friends. And so at that time I had been itching to go start a company, and I had been holding myself back because I just felt this is not the right time. Let's see this through these projects. Let's just see where this takes me. And I'm so glad I did that, because had I left earlier, it may have landed me in some different direction. And frankly, the only way that it was probably, even made sense to do this was that company went out of business. And so it was like, well, I can keep going and I can keep trying to use the skill set I've learned, here in the community. So that was the initial, to get back to your question, the initial goal was I want to start a business. I think I can do it. I've spent 2 years learning things that I felt I could maybe tweak or adjust and do a little bit different. In my mind, I thought it would be better how I would like to do things. And then it was like, okay, like I said, it was looking at the bank, how many payrolls can I make of me and a few part-time people, basically, to like make it through. And if I have to go get a job, I'll get a job. And then I remember it kind of evolved. Like that year, it was, okay, well, we can if we just hang on to get a couple more clients, I can at least guarantee that I have a job till Christmas. And then it was like, okay, we got some core partnerships. Hey, like maybe we can start to hire, And so there wasn't rapid growth. We were profitable. We were lucky to be profitable that first year, but it was really slow. And then the second year, things started to change. And it was like, oh man, maybe we're not here just to pay for food at the end of the day. Maybe we can do something meaningful and something that's like, maybe we really have a shot. And then the third year, that was our biggest year. And that's where we doubled our staff. And so I think sometimes you forget when you're in the middle of it, you forget how different your thought process is than it used to be. And it's kind of like when you get your first car and it's a super, super crazy beat up piece of crap or whatever. Right. And then but that's great. And then immediately, it's like, at least for me, maybe it's just because I'm so vain or something, but it's like immediately your standard is now like, what's the next car? And so even if you're not thinking about that all day, like your new standard is higher. And then pretty soon you look back and you've made all this progress and you've got a much nicer situation than you used to have, but even that is just the new normal.
Totally.
And so that's kind of how it's been with the businesses. Like by no means have we made it or are we this huge thing, but every day I have to remind myself where we came from when I get frustrated with our inefficiencies or where we're not yet.
Totally.
Yeah.
When I was 16, my dad gave me a Geo Metro. So it was pretty sick, 4-door, 3-cylinder, great car. And when in my 20s, when I'd get really, I sold it for like $200, right? In my 20s, when I'd get really like frustrated with financial stuff, be like, oh, I wish I still had that Geo. That Geo was just as good as the Audi I'm driving now. It was just cost me no money. Like, how incredible. And then I went back and drove it, or a similar one, and I was like, oh, this sucks, actually.
Yeah.
Like, this sucks to drive so bad.
Totally.
But in the time when you're thinking about all the good things in the past, even though it was obviously way worse. So I like the car analogy a lot, actually, for like growing businesses and stuff. Because it's you look back and you're like, oh, it was so simple back then, you know? We didn't have to worry about paying 27 people, you know?
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, yeah, like how nice it'd be, but it actually was way worse.
Yeah, totally.
You've talked a lot about being this one-stop shop, so I don't think does it justice, but this place where it's like, okay, we can solve your manufacturing problems. We can everything from like timelines, money, but even like design and stuff like that, right? Like,
yeah,
for us, you've talked to us a lot about like, and you helped us a lot with design. Is that, to me, that makes you stand apart a lot from a lot of other people, because a lot of other people aren't doing that side of things, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it, and that's kind of been our new insight. I've spent the last probably 6 months really trying to understand what is the market telling us, and I get so deep into the weeds of trying to help build the company that I've had to take a step back, and I've done surveys and I've had interviews and I've tried to understand and listen. And what I was hearing was that, so there's two sides to this. There's this, as far as when you talk about making a product. So we call it pre-production, or you can call it product development. You can call it a bunch of things. But basically, it's what has to happen for when you have an idea in your head to get that to the point where you can actually send it to a manufacturer. And then there's the side of how do you find the right manufacturer? How do you develop the right relationships and systems and team to then take it all the way through the quality, the production management, the logistics, and the delivery. And so as an early company, while I'm a product guy, you know, by way of, I guess, passion, I'm not a trained designer, product designer. And so when it was just a small group of people that were more operationally minded than they were product minded, we didn't really have a choice at that point. We had to make a choice. It was, we couldn't do both, I guess is the better way to say it. We had to either focus on the operational side of things or the front end. At least that's how I saw it. Mm-hmm. And because naturally we had the skills to do the actual manufacturing and the sourcing, we kind of told people, come with your designs. And that wasn't a huge problem. I was turning down opportunities, but for me it was, we'll help facilitate. If you need to get something made or a tech pack or something, I will refer you, but I don't have in-house help to do that. I'm going to just own that system of like production and try to become really good at it. And that got us to where we were. But this last year, as our customers become more and more integral partners, what we're finding is that there's a real synergy in being able to be the front side of that solution for them as well. So it's companies like Gravel, you know, or other companies that we work with where it's like the constraint sometimes is how quickly you can get a new product to market. And sometimes it's cash flow, sometimes it's, you know, there's other things. But what we found is if we can invest in our partnerships by helping accelerate the speed at which they get more products to market, then they're going to grow faster. Every time that we build a successful product, they're going to order it. And so we get money that way.
Totally.
And so it's a really kind of symbiotic relationship. And so a lot of the design firms, at least that I have become kind of familiar with, a lot of them really own the front end. And product design firms, they'll get your idea, they'll get the CAD made, or they'll make the drawings, they'll get it ready, they'll even sample it or prototype it. But a lot of the time, they expect that they hand that back off to you. Mm-hmm. You go out and you do the manufacturing with a different company or direct.
Yeah.
And if they do the manufacturing, a lot of them, it's not really their core either, right? So you're risking that not being really as ideal. And so now that we have this engine built for the operation heavy part of this, the goal now this year and looking forward has been we're going to be building the most capable, skilled team of product designers that we can in-house.
Cool.
We just brought on our first designer. I've met with another, 30 plus in the last 2 months, graduating students all the way up to 10, 15-year veterans. And so the goal is, again, let's accelerate it for our customers and be the firm that can take you all the way through. And we can only do that because I think we segmented one half and we didn't perfect it. Obviously, there's room there, but we got it to where it's sustainable, it's effective.
Totally.
And now let's build another company within this that can service the front, and I think it's going to be really cool.
So it also makes a lot of sense because when you're just handling manufacturing, the designs part, and I say this from experience, can be difficult. Like right now, we're trying to develop like this latch that's held down by a magnet, right? But I don't know what magnets the manufacturer has. So then I design something and then they come back and say, well, we don't have that, but we have this. But if you guys are doing a lot more in-house, all of a sudden it's like a direct communication of design while communicating with the factory, right? So it's like, oh, well, they have these magnets and they suggest we do it like this, okay. And all of a sudden it's all in one versus I think it'll just eliminate a lot more like back and forth versus designing something, manufacturer says something, comes back, you change it, then they, you know what I mean? There's a lot of that. And when you're doing that, when the manufacturer is in Vietnam or China or whatever, and that's at night, all of a sudden you design it during the day, get feedback at night, design it during the day, get feedback at night, and you're like 5 days into it. Yeah. But I think, I don't know, that relationship makes a lot of sense to me between designer and manufacturer because the manufacturer has so much say in how you're designing.
Yeah, totally. And that's the other insight is really like historically a lot of what's been done, at least for contract manufacturing, it's different when you're Nike or you're Apple, right? And you kind of build an ecosystem that's inaccessible to the rest of the world that doesn't have that kind of money. Mm-hmm. But for most contract manufacturing, what you do is you say, I want to build something like this, and you go to Cabela's and you find a swatch that you're like, I like this material, right? And we've done it together. Yeah. And it's like that's still an effective way, but what people don't always realize is that it's not like there's a magical network, you know, in China or in Vietnam or wherever, where they just, oh, we got this piece of material, let's just scan it, and it like we know where to buy it, right? Like it's people calling each other, calling fabric mills, hey, this is what I've got, what do you have that's similar? Totally. So you can imagine with a country that has the kind of intricacy that China does, like that's not a fast process unless it's a really common material. So the idea is, can you flip that equation, and can you bring can you represent the manufacturer's capabilities to your customers? Totally. And that's where we want to go, even more so, but that's exactly it. This is the beginning of that next phase.
Like that seems to be the most frustrating part is materials. Yeah. It's like, and that you don't really realize that beforehand. It's like, oh, well, I want this material. It's like, well, you could literally look at it like with I wanted to say telescope, with a,
you could,
with a microscope. You could literally look at it with a microscope and like another material or even the same material, just a different run might look a little bit different. You know what I mean? Or totally. Like even in photos,
coatings,
it's like,
stretch, movement.
Yeah. Send me a photo of it. It's like, with stretch and movement or with, a texture. Yeah. It's like, unless you have that in hand, you like almost have to buy a backpack that you like the material, cut it up into like 100 different swatches and send it to 100 different fabric manufacturers. Yeah. Just to like try and find something close, you know? And even then it's like kind of, cause there's also manufacturers for materials in China, Taiwan, like all over the place, Mexico. It's like, anyway, it's all a joke, and everybody imports the materials everywhere. So just cause that backpack says made in China, doesn't mean that material is made in China. I don't know. It just seems super complicated, which is also the nice part about hiring somebody like you is you have connections to all these factories already. So for me, it'd be like, oh, if I want to find this material by myself, all of a sudden I need to make all these connections to try and find it versus you already have a lot of them. Even with manufacturing and stuff too, it just simplifies it a lot.
Totally. Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
For us too, the other thing that's been huge is the leverage that you guys have with manufacturers. So again, if I hit up a manufacturer and was like, hey, I want to make 2,000 toiletry bags, they'd be like, okay, but that's not like a lot of leverage. But for you, you'd be like, hey, I realized we ordered backpacks last week for this client. We ordered this and this and this from you guys. We have another client that's coming in. They want to order 2,000 toiletry bags. What's the best price you can get us? you're going to likely get a way better price than I am because I'm just some random person with no trust. Like my value proposition to them is very low, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that, there's a mentality again. It's like everybody knows a guy who can get stuff in China, but you have to imagine what it's like to be on their side of the fence.
Totally.
You know, like they're getting thousands, tens of thousands of requests from mostly people who don't have the money or time to actually do it right.
Totally.
And so they're left to try and filter through these opportunities, and then cater to them like they're all going to be the next big thing. And so the thing I hear a lot is just tell the factory that we're going to be the next big thing.
Totally.
It's like, you don't think they hear that every single day,
literally every email.
And it's like, that doesn't mean anything to them. Like,
totally.
And so I found that the best way to work with people in manufacturing is one, buying power does help. Like you're talking about this buying power, this relationship that's more than just one gig. But also there's a respect there in a relationship, especially in these different cultures. Relationships are so critical.
Totally.
And so part of our service is that when we have core customers, we don't just like send an inquiry. We go and fly over there, usually executives from our team here, or usually alongside our nationals in that country. We sit down for a day or a week or whatever it takes, and we get to know these people. We go out to dinner with them. We have all kinds of gross, crazy foods together.
We fall asleep at dinner.
Yes, fall asleep at dinner.
We went to Vietnam together, and it was right after traveling, we went to dinner, and it's a different time zone. And Alex may or may not have fallen asleep at dinner.
Yeah, I did. And I was glad Lance was there because he was carrying on strong.
It was so fun. But yeah, Ken's great, and it was still a great dinner. But
yeah, I mean, and that's it. Those honestly, those are the moments that enable you to have leverage to if you're in a positive leverage, with each other. It's like if you're in a tough situation and it's going to be a holiday and you have to get your product out, like you better believe that the people over there, if they're going to choose between anyone, it's the person that treats them like a friend, and
totally.
And not because they are trying to get something out of it, but genuinely respecting the fact that, hey, what I'm asking you to do is hard, and I need you, and you need us to succeed. So let's foster that. And
totally.
and it's just those little small moments and the kind of the fun memories that enable you to have that. And a lot of people, and there's different ways to look at it, but a lot of people, I've recently worked with someone who comes from sourcing, and she's been doing it for a long time, and I have nothing negative to say about her, but what I did notice is that her mentality is, I'm going to beat you up, and I'm going to get every last drop of efficiency out of this relationship for my company. And while there is a time to be kind of tough with a manufacturer, what it did to us was that it made us not want to work for her, right? And so her intention is good, but her mindset is such that it's like, I'm going to be the kingpin, and you will respect me, and you'll do that because you want to work for us. And I've just found that these are people, like they have families, they have relationships, they have needs, and it's just not the right way to do it.
Totally.
If you want a lasting relationship that's going to be there when you need it more than, ever.
No, I totally see that. And it's been fun. Right now, we obviously can't go visit factories nearly as easy, which is a bummer. But that's one of my favorite parts about owning a business is like rallying over there and meeting the Kens or the Jasons or, whoever. I always just say they feel like the disappointed uncle, like at times, because that's kind of the role they play. It's like, please, like, Ken, please, can you do this? And they're like, I just can't.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, it's like you almost just feel like this kid again, just like,
yep.
But that's like where this relationship goes, where it's like you just become friends. It feels almost like more of a friendship than a business relationship.
Yeah.
And it's also fun because like even just chatting with someone from Vietnam, it's like, sorry friends, I have to go on a call with Vietnam, with my homie in Vietnam or with my friend in China or with, I don't know. It's one of my favorite parts about business in general.
And it's kind of like I guess if romantic is the right word, but like a romantic idea that a product can do that to the world. And that's part of our new mission statement, is if I can remember it here, it's Basically, our mission is to inspire innovation, to build local economies, and to create tangible experiences for people around the world. And so those are the three things as I thought about what is it that actually drives me to do this? Because it's not manufacturing. Like it's what is it that is this kind of romantic, like meaningful, lasting feeling that I get from doing this? And it's inspiration. Like when I'm inspired, when I inspire people, when I contribute positively to an economy around the world that's not just my own, and you see like, you see anywhere from a really large factory all the way down to a small workshop in a village in Mexico, and a person who is working, their butt off to help your company grow, gets to feed their family because you're giving them orders, and you get to feed your family because you're giving them orders. And the guy who buys it from you is getting to feed their family or gets to experience this kind of visceral experience. And so, I really kind of like gravitate to that message, and I'm not some kind of like, philanthropic, great Gandhi figure or anything. I'm just that feeling.
You are, dude.
That feeling is like it's meaningful and it lasts beyond what you're trying to do. And so it's kind of a cool thing. Like the backpack we had this crazy experience. We flew into Vietnam, but we weren't just building a backpack. Like that was going to mean a lot to you and to me and to the people there who were trying to build it. And that's a super cool story to tell.
Totally. Yeah. Long story short, we ended up, we flew there right as the pandemic hit, and when Japan and Korea both like got really bad, we were in Vietnam. And anyway, we're scared we were going to get stuck
Nuts.
there.
Yeah.
We've got some good stories, but one of my main pet peeves is when people like say, I won't buy anything unless it's made in the US. I'm like, you obviously have never been outside the US. Like these people have families as well. They're humans as well. Being proud of the U.S. and being proud of the country that you're from, I think is a great thing. But I also think that now more than any time else, like the history of the earth, we've never been as connected as we are currently. We've never been a one giant society as we are currently. And the future is a giant society, is like everyone. So I don't know. I think just meeting these people at factories, and even just traveling to other countries and realizing that they're all just humans trying to make it, I'm like, I don't know. I see a lot of benefits in manufacturing overseas.
Absolutely. And I had, when I was dating my wife, it was when I was starting to learn about manufacturing. And she basically was kind of like, she comes from a family of really... first of all, awesome people, but extremely conservative cowboys. And so they're all like, one of them does just incredible like handmade cowboy belts.
Sick.
In his shop. And so they're very patriotic in a very good way. But she also kind of had the mentality of like, do we really want to be a part of like the whole kind of buying things in China instead of America thing? And it kind of caught me off guard because I was like, well, why do we feel different about this? And so anyway, it was a positive experience, but I ended up talking to my economics professor at the time, and he kind of just shared with me how this whole idea of the best thing that you can do for America and for the people here is to allow them to do what they're best at and to support other countries in what they're best at. So the idea has never been take all the work away from America. The idea is where there's a need that can be filled better somewhere else. This is really high level, right? But let those people add value to the world that way.
Totally.
And it's not just that, but it's like if you were selling your gravel, if you had to make your gravel blanket here, or your toiletry kit here, like it's actually, as much as you could say that helps workers here, and it would, you would have to sell it for so much more.
Totally.
And does that actually help you and all of your consumers in the way that you're trying to? And so but there are things you can make, and that's a whole discussion. But I guess the idea is, yeah, it's really cool. You let people do what they're really good at, and that's actually what's best for both of you.
And I've thought that exact same thing. Gravel would not be a business if we had to manufacture here. Like we could not sell our travel blanket for $400, you know?
Yeah.
And that like I wouldn't be surprised at all if our cost was close to $100 on that blanket here, you know? Because it's just really intricate. So it's funny that people complain like, what? You sell that blanket for $130? But then the same people also complain, what? It's made in Vietnam? It's like, what? like, okay, you got to decide one way or the other. It's either you're willing to pay a lot more for, honestly, I don't want to say superior work, but people in Vietnam and China and everywhere that are big manufacturers, most of the time are going to make a higher quality product than a factory here. From what I've seen.
Well, yeah, and it's not because the people here aren't capable. It's that for so long they have invested in an infrastructure,
totally,
and in training and in this kind of integral part of their lifestyle that they have become really, really good at it. And so it's not just the skill set; it's the whole ecosystem that provides that product. The efficiencies that they've created are incredible, and I'm sure America can create them, and we have created them in our own industries. But it's just some industries have been served better.
Totally.
There.
Dude, I literally was figuring, like, I'm trying to drop ship these beanies. And they can ship from China one of these beanies for like, what was it, $3.50?
Yeah, it's nuts.
To anywhere in the US. It's like, what? I can't hardly ship this beanie to Florida for $3.50, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just crazy. And it's not necessarily because you're like taking advantage of people. It's that they've created these infrastructures for that very reason. They're like, oh, okay, in order for drop shipping to make sense for our factory, we have to figure out the logistics of getting it there. Okay, let's figure out the best process we possibly can. And all of a sudden they can do it way cheaper. So it's like, I don't know. It's this whole different mindset, I guess. We could literally talk for hours about it. But I just like, I like the idea of like a global economy instead of only a U.S. economy. Like we're helping everybody.
Well, and there's kind of I don't know if we want to get into it right now, but there is a story behind the movement, why certain economies are now and will always be best, probably for certain things. And so anyway, yeah, without getting into all of that detail, it's so important to our economy, and it's amazing to have stuff made in America when it's feasible.
Totally.
But when it's not, until it's not, it's so good to have countries to lean on.
Totally. So obviously technology is getting better and better. Robots are getting better and better. Do you think that there's a future where manufacturing does get brought back to first world countries because robots are so affordable and so good at their job? Or do you think it will always be handmade products?
So essentially what's happening is that the reason that China, well, one of many reasons that China has been able to have such an advantage in manufacturing in surrounding countries is that their labor cost is significantly lower than where it is right now here in America.
Totally.
There's a whole conversation around that, but essentially the idea right now is that middle class is shrinking, or the lower class is shrinking, the middle class is growing exponentially, not just in China, but globally. It's predicted that there'll be another 2 billion people in middle class members of society by 2030. And so with that happening, what happens is that you have this revolution of the younger generation in China who don't have all of the traditionalist mindsets of their parents, and they really want to be a part of society in a different way. And a lot of that means that they don't want to be a part of the factory, the tradition of working in factories. And so all of our employees, you know, I can't say all, but a lot of them share that sentiment, that they want something different than what their parents wanted. And so with this growing middle class and their economy kind of growing in that way, the reason that China, one of the reasons they had an advantage is that the lower class is able to perform these less skilled, highly skilled tasks efficiently, right? And kind of the cost of capital makes sense for that. But what happens is when that middle class grows and there's a higher cost there, the way that that's being offset right now is that when automation is introduced into a system, that's okay that there are less low-class people because the lower-class members of the community, because the machines can do that work. And so that's actually bringing it. The idea is like, well, will it push it away from China? It will, but it very well will come back, because China has now a stronger middle and upper class and more money to build an infrastructure of robotic, artificial intelligence, all of that stuff. And that will happen with America, Germany, again, these European countries. And so the countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar, they all benefited a lot from this trade war, because they were able to take on so much work that was kind of a mass exodus from China. They were able to raise up their wages and support it because they had such a high demand. And so it was actually extremely beneficial, not just to those countries, but to other economies around the world that, like Mexico, that got this runoff, and it forced them to reinvest in infrastructures because now they had the demand and the money to do so. But again, the problem with a place like Bangladesh is that they don't have the middle and upper class to support the technology that will eventually take over the lower classes' jobs.
Got it.
And so there's kind of that fear that manufacturing will continue to not fear, but that the reality that manufacturing will likely continue to stay with the countries that can invest in the future of manufacturing. And so it will reshore things to America, but it won't. There's no reason for it to completely take it away from some of these other, strongholds, because they'll also be leading in technology that allows them to be even more efficient than they are now. So that was kind of a lot of jumble, but
no, it's great.
It's pretty interesting, and the hope is that kind of the lower class, if it's not manufacturing, there will always be things in manufacturing, but as that shrinks, there are other economies that have proven to be really that they're more I want to say fireproof, but that's not the word. They're more stabilized against this kind of a situation, like tourism or agriculture in some aspects of agriculture. And so you imagine like a lot of the African countries, the problem that they have economically is that they don't have the infrastructure to support it. Not that their labor is the lowest in a lot of instances in the whole world. So their issue isn't the skilled labor at low wage. Their issue is the infrastructure to support those systems. And so, but a country in like Malawi or Rwanda will have a huge export of like tourism, because that is hard to do with machines, and it's always going to need people in that class to support it. So that's kind of we'll see what happens, but I think China's always going to be important to that story.
That's it. I've never thought of it in that way, because you think like, oh, well, once there's machines, we can do it here. But really, the machines are not what are lacking currently between the U.S. and China. It's the infrastructure that China's made, that Vietnam made, that these manufacturing countries have made. The U.S., we obviously export goods, but not at nearly as a rate as those countries. So it's an interesting thought that it's not just the machines that we're missing.
Yeah.
It's the machines are like the last, like pretty low on the list compared to the infrastructure.
Yeah, and that's what, I mean, even with gravel, we've learned, right, with like going into exploring different countries and opportunities. It's like 70% of textile raw materials will still come from China, because while Vietnam has a really highly skilled labor force to assemble, it's like China is just an animal when it comes to the systems. They're really, honestly, it's inspiring. It's really cool. So go China.
Let's move. Maybe we should move there.
Yeah, we should. That'd be great.
That'd be perfect. Cool. Well, overall, I was going to do like a Q&A and stuff, but I haven't found the questions yet. And honestly, we've been talking for a long time. So I think we can just end it here. Do you have anything else you really want to add? Do you even like a way to contact you and stuff as well? You can do that, but.
Yeah, we would love anyone who is interested, who would like support with their manufacturing, their operations. We'd love to talk to you, even if it's not for full service. Anything that I can personally do to help you guys, help your company, point you in the right direction, I'd love to do it. So you can reach me at alex@shiftglobal.com, shift with a Y, so SHYFT. And yeah, I'd love to help.
Cool. And I will put all that stuff down in the description as well. I'll put his email, their website, stuff like that. But thanks so much for joining today. It's been a good time. If you guys have any questions or anything, leave it down below. We'll try and answer them for you. And don't forget to subscribe. So subscribing is super free for you and does a ton for us. So if you could do that, so great. But overall, thanks, Alex, for coming today.
Thank you.
So fun, and hope you guys learned some stuff. We send out these videos every Tuesday, helping you guys to build your business. So if you have anything else that you want us to cover, leave it down below, and we'll see you guys soon. See you later.